lots of characteristics of Animalia. Firstly, Animalia is multicellular heterotroph. It feeds on other living things. For example, there are lots of types of Animalia such as herbivores, omnivores, carnivores, and parasites based on their eating. Next, Animalia also have diverse in form and size, which can divide in invertebrates and also vertebrates. There also have 35 phyla in Animalia. Most Animalia is occur in the sea. Next, Animalia also lack of cell walls is because there are lots of flexible cells can organize into tissue. Tissue can perform well with their specific function in their body.
Okay, so another characteristics of Animalia is they are motile. This Animalia is one of the most distinguishable traits compared to other kingdoms due to cell flexibility and evolution of nerve and muscle tissues.
Animalia also can reproduce bisexual or asexual. They undergo sexual reproduction by the production of sperm and eggs, and for asexual reproduction, some animals will undergo budding, fragmentation, and binary fission. Animalia also undergo embryonic development and produce endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm tissues that give rise to the tissues and the organ.
The common name of Porifera is called sponge. Sponge is the only surviving in parazoans. Porifera is included in Parazoa, which is the animal subkingdom that includes organisms of phyla Porifera and Brachiozoa. Porifera is pore-bearing organism, which is multicellular organism. Porifera is also aquatic animal, mostly can found in marine, some can found in freshwater. Porifera are asymmetrical. Porifera is also most primitive organism. Their body are sharp and size vary and also have brightly colors. Their body is cylindrical and not contain any organ. Porifera is started as larva and becomes seal. It also can regenerate their lost parts. Sponge has central cavity. We call it as spongocoil or atrium. The function of central cavity is to open to the outside through the oscula. Sponge also have lots of incurrent pores. We call it as ostia. The function of incurrent pores is to lead water into spongocoil through the system canals. The more branch canals and oscula, the more complex for food capture. The sponge body has outer layer and inner layer. The layer of the body is separated by mesohyl, which has jelly-like substance. Mesohyl acts like an endoskeleton. It can maintain the tubular morphology of sponge. The outer layer of the sponge body is called pinococytes. The function of pinococyte is to phagocyte large food particles. The inner layer of the sponge body is called choanocytes. The function of choanocyte is to generate water and filter food particles from water. At the outer layer of the sponge body, there contain lots of amyloidocytes, which the cells wandering in mesohyl. The function of amyloidocyte is to digest food from water, transport nutrients from cell to cell, as well as secrete spongin and spicules to strengthen and protect the sponge. There are two types of reproduction for Porifera. One is sexual reproduction and second one is asexual reproduction. For sexual reproduction, there also have two ways for sexual reproduction. First one is hermaphroditic, which is both sexes, and also gonochoristic, which is separated sexes. For asexual, there also have two ways for this reproduction. First one is budding and second one is fragmentation.
we are going to learn about phylum Cnidaria. So generally, what is phylum Cnidaria consists of? Basically, Cnidaria is a phylum that describes over 1,000 species, and some of them are corals, jellyfish, and hydras. These aquatic entities are seen in both marine and freshwater habitats. Now, let's go to the phylum characteristics. The characteristic of phylum Cnidaria is they are radially symmetrical and soft-bodied animals. That means that they do not have the outer hard skeleton. Secondly, phylum Cnidaria has outer and inner epithelium that divided by a tissue commonly known as mesoglia. Phylum Cnidaria animals are mostly found in aquatic habitats, primarily in marine environments, and some live in freshwater. The first classification of phylum Cnidaria is hydrozoa. Hydrozoan can reproduce sexual and asexually. It only exists in the polyp form. There are stinging cells around their mouth, and they mostly just have 4 tentacles. So now the Scyphozoa. Scyphozoa can be referred as the true jellyfish. It typically ranges from 2 to 40 cm in diameter. Medusa is the main stage in their life cycle. Scyphozoa does not occur in freshwater, and they eat a variety of crustaceans and fish. The last classification is Anthozoa. So basically, Anthozoa contains the sea anemones and corals. They do not have a medusa stage in their development, and they are either individual or colonial polyps.
So next, we are gonna talk about phylum Platyhelminthes. So, phylum Platyhelminthes are the flatworms, and they're quite literally named this because they're quite literally flat. Some species of flatworm are literally only a few cells thick. They have a very high surface area to volume ratio, and there is a reason why these organisms are flat. These organisms do not have any kind of lungs, any kind of gills, any kind of respiratory structure to move oxygen and other gases around its body. A lot of organisms do. So instead, what needs to happen in our flatworm is that each individual cell has to do its own diffusion. It has to get its own oxygen. That's why they are flat, so that more and more cells have access to the environment around it, and more cells can do that individual diffusion to get the gases, particularly oxygen, that they need. So it's actually an adaptation to be such a flatworm. If you take a look at this worm, definitely they have bilateral symmetry. These worms are a great example of bilateral symmetry. They have one line of symmetry, and they are more or less similar between the left half and the right half. Every single bilateral organism is triploblastic, and here is a picture of what its body cavity looks like. But you may notice it doesn't have a body cavity. Yes, it has that mesoderms that's in between the endoderm and the ectoderm, but there's no space there. It's not open, there's no phylum or body cavity, and this is gonna make this group of organisms in a colony. The type of digestion this organism have is incomplete digestion. Incomplete digestion was you have one opening for both the mouth and the anus. Next, we are going to talk about 3 different classes of phylum Platyhelminthes. So the first class we'll talk about is class Tabellaria. Tabellaria is a free-living worm, and what free-living means doesn't necessarily mean, oh, they are out in the wild all free, but it means they are not parasitic. Tabellaria is also the members of Planaria. These Tabellaria are bottom dwellers in freshwater and marine environment. They crawl on stones, sand, or vegetation. To feed, tabellarians use a mouth-like pore that is positioned at the pharyngeal cavity that is located at the ventral side of the organism. The next class is class Nematoda. Nematoda is a leaf-like parasitic flukes. This group include the lung flukes, liver flukes, and blood flukes. They are internal parasites of mollusks and vertebrates. Most Nematoda have a complex life cycle with at least 2 hosts, and Nematoda are exclusively parasitic. Every single fluke, every single Nematoda is a parasitic organism, and most of these are internal parasites. Part of their life cycle is finished in one host, and another part of their life cycle is finished in another host. And what's cool about this group of parasites is that some parasites exhibit mind control. So when they are inside of another organism, they can actually control that organism to do something. Also, Nematoda have oral and ventral suckers, which they employ for attachment and migration. The digestive system originates at the oral sucker and contains a pharynx, an esophagus, and a bifurcated intestine. There is no anus, thus, waste product must be regurgitated following digestion. The last class that we are going to talk about is class Cestoda. So what are Cestoda? Cestoda is known as the tapeworm, which is the common term for medically important parasitic worms of the taxonomic class of Cestoda, the cestodes. So why are cestodes oftentimes called tapeworm? It's because their body has tape-like segmented shape to it. Cestodes have a head called a scolex, which has suckers. Some cestodes also have hooks on their head as well. Cestoda don't have a body cavity. Instead, their inside are filled with spongy cells that suspend their internal organs. And when it comes down to reproduction, Cestoda are monoecious. In other words, they are hermaphrodites. They are also oviparous or egg-laying. So that's all about the phylum Platyhelminthes.
Phylum Nematoda, we commonly call it as roundworms. Many of roundworms are parasitic that can found it in variety of hosts including human. Some of the nematoda are free-living that can found it in freshwater, soil, and marine habitats. Their body is bilaterally symmetrically, and their head is radially symmetrical. Their body also elongated, cylindrical, and tapped at both ends. Their body also covered with tough, flexible cuticles that can give protection and prevent body from expanding. Roundworms will do molting for their growth. Most of the roundworms are dioecious, which are separate sexes to reproduce sexually. Roundworms have complete digestive system with mouth and anus. They do not have any circulatory system and excretory system. Hence, gases and nutrients can dissolve directly through the body wall by diffusion. The body of roundworm is triploblastic, which derive from three embryonic cell layers such as ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. The body of roundworms is pseudocoelomate. It has body cavity that is not derived from the mesoderm. Internal organs such as intestine and reproductive organs are suspended within the fluid-filled pseudocoelom, which act as hydrostatic skeleton to transport nutrients. With pseudocoelomate body, roundworms can move efficiently along solid surface. The example of nematoda is Rubia malayi. These roundworms can cause lymphatic filariasis, as the common name is called elephantiasis. This disease can be transmitted by mosquito that call it as Mansonia. When the adult worm resides in lymphatic vessels, It can cause blockage. Lymphatic fluid cannot flow through the vessels that can cause limbs to swell.